So I ended up splitting in the end. So if you were expecting I went 9-0 with Rhinar undefeated at my local, it's not happening. That's not this video. That's not what this video is. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It is your boy, guy who plays Rhinar way too much. I am here with yet another deck tech video, sort of. This is more just going to be my tournament report for the ProQuest Singapore event that took place that I competed in over this past weekend. I'm going to talk about like the minor changes I made to the deck. You'll have the deck list down below. I'm not going to do the full top to bottom deck tech just because it's been 5 years. We know what Rhinar does. Other people have done Rhinar content. I have done Rhinar content. We know why Swing Big is good, right? That's not like, we're not changing the world with that. So instead, I'm just gonna talk about how the deck as I built it functions and why it's important to have a certain game plan going into your events. So the two major decks that I expected to run into in this tournament, and I categorize them instead of just like by hero as like style of deck, right? So there's the Aurora style of deck where it's very aggressive, she's trying to do a lot of damage, it's very unclear how much damage she's going to do in a given turn, it's very hard to read channel lightning valleys, etc. So like baseline, I needed my deck to be able to fight Auroras, to contend with Aurora at like a reasonable 45-55 rate. And then on the flip side, with Enigma going, now we have a gap for new fatigue decks, because before Enigma was really gatekeeping the slowest decks in the format, the decks that just wanted to sit there and block and outvalue through defense rather than offense, right? So I needed my list to both be able to handle racing Aurora and also like playing a numbers game with Aurora, but I also needed to be fast enough and aggressive enough that I could take down Scepter, OTK, Florian, which is kind of like the other deck that I was expecting to see a lot of. And lo and behold, I'll have the meta of my tournament up for you to see. There were 43 players, which was 6 rounds. I went 5-1 in Swiss before top 8, so I ended up splitting in the end. So if you were expecting I went 9-0 with Rhinar undefeated at my local, it's not happening. That's not this video. That's not what this video is. But this video should hopefully give you enough confidence to bring Rhinar to your locals, especially after Aurora leaves. I think Rhinar's position gets so much better after that happens. Right now, the Aurora matchup is still like rough. It is tough out there, folks. So let's get into it. The list I played, which you can see it here or wherever I've put it on the screen, the functional idea is that I have a switch list. So the base list of the deck runs the 3 pulping, 3 wild ride combo. The combination of both 3 pulpings and 3 wild rides. And this is what I would call the aggro Rhinar, Eugene style, right? So we're playing aggressively, we're rolling scabs, we are doing our best to race our opponent. We're trying to kill our opponent so fast, we're trying to leak damage turn 0. That style of list. Contrasted with the way I prefer to play Rhinar, which is the slow, micro decision, almost like Guardian-esque style of gameplay, where we're running 60 reacts. So we have the 6 sinks and 3 sinks and 3 shelters. And the concept here is pretty much very simply, these 12 cards swap out for each other 1 for 1, most of the time. The only times where you're really shaking things up is when there's like an assassin in play, and you'll want to run both the go wide strategy and the D-react strategy, since both are very helpful, and you also have that little extra bit of deck buffer in case they do some banishing. So you don't lose all your offense at once on a defensive build, and so you can actually defend their attacks in an offensive build. So that's pretty simple. I've already gone over why Wild Ride and Pulping are good, but the point is Rhinar usually has a pretty hard time clearing 4-card hands, and Wild Ride and Pulping allow you to do that, especially into slower decks like OTK Florian, like Verdance, like Jarl. The The biggest issue I have with Wild Ride pulpings is they work best on big hands or on risky hands. So like the best Wild Ride is going to be best for you when you draw a miss, which is a blue, unless it's Wreck and Romp. If it's Wreck and Romp, you're golden. But if you draw a blue and then don't discard it, that's like the best case scenario for a Wild Ride or a pulping. So that's usually my problem with it, is something has to go wrong and then you have to get lucky, right, for it to really pay off. The only way for this not to be true is if you start with a hand with minimum two yellows, one red, and then a Wild Ride, or pulping an arsenal. At that point, no matter what happens, you'll be able to go Wild Ride, Claw, Claw something, or Wild Ride, Claw something, depending on your draws. But the scary part about that is, of course, you've kept a full grip, 4-card hand, 1-card in arsenal, and then if you whiff on your Wild Ride pulping, it's just like over. But that's just a risk you have to take sometimes. So that's the Switchboard. Then we have some changes to the main deck. I ran 2 yellow Pack Call. Now these were a sub-in for yellow Mighty Windups. Because Enigma's gone, I didn't feel like I needed Mighty Windup anymore to extend my turns quite as far. It's easier to get through Florian and Verdance than it is to get through Enigma. Like they don't require you to use all 4 cards every turn. So I was able to swap out 2 Mighty Windups, and I wanted 2 yellow 3 blocks that were also 6s into some of the more aggressive matchups that I could use to block with. And specifically, it's because I have Rose in my meta. Rose is a very good dash player. She's a very good Mechanologist player. Rose is like an incredible player, and I usually expect to see her on Mechanologist at these types of events. So I also wanted to have some way of, I wanted to have additional 3 blocks in my deck to be able to handle fatiguing Dash IO and potential max. I'm running 1 copy of Alpha Rampage and 1 copy of Savage Beatdown. Now, Savage Beatdown, this is purely here for the high roll. It is really good with Savage Feast, it's really good with Beast Within, and it works incredibly well off of a Sash turn. It's for everyone. It's both for people I want to race and for people I want to fatigue. You can either set it up for a really big play, getting the right cards, or you can emergency fire it off with like a windup, right? You can discard Agile Windup, pitch a blue, and then play Savage Beatdown for 12. And that's a fine play. But most of the time, what you want to be doing with this card is having 2 action points, either through a Scabs roll or through Agility, and playing it with like Savage Feast or playing it with Blood Rush. The other card, Alpha Rampage, I really wish I could be on more of these, but in truth, Alpha Rampage just feels not as good without the full barraging package. And I was not confident on barraging Beatdown going into this tournament, simply because I kind of expected with Enigma gone, I was kind of thinking that people would be more on the CYB end of things, and Intimidate ends up being really bad against CYB unless you can go fast enough. And I didn't feel like I was going to be able to pressure enough damage if I brought the barraging Beatdown package with Alpha Rampage, and then someone just like CYB'd me. Because the problem with barraging Beatdown, the problem with Intimidate actually against life gain, is that I can stop your ability to block right now. But CYB means you get to block later. You get to block whenever you have wanted to. So like I didn't really do anything if I like Intimidate your blocking card, because you can just pitch it to CYB. You know what I mean? So Alpha Rampage, less valuable, but I still like it. It still works fine with blue barraging Beatdowns. It works fine with the windups. It works fine on Blood Rush turns. And more importantly, it's a 9. And 9's pretty good against Prism. So I wanted to up my density. I didn't want just 3 swing bigs as my only answer to Herald Triumphs. So I felt very confident with 3 swing bigs, 1 Alpha Rampage, and of course, the 6 D-Reacts. Next interesting card is Thick Hide Hunter. I'm running 2 of them. I have found this card both very good and very awkward. It's a card that I don't think I'm ever going to want 3 of, simply because blocking away with it is not actually very easy, especially if you have cards that you want in your hand. So like imagine like you're trying to set a card into Arsenal, right? All of a sudden that means you basically can't block with Thick Hide Hunter, otherwise you'll have a chance of getting rid of your Blood Rush, have a chance of getting rid of your Savage Feast, etc. But on the other hand, when you are blocking with your full hand all the time, always, see like the Mechanologist matchup, or at least the Dash.io matchup right now, then all of a sudden these turn your blocking hands into 15 value turns, which is really good. Not only that, but they're very good at covering Dominate, they're good at covering Overpower, because you can just block with 6 from your hand and then any additional from Arsenal, right? It's 6 on one card. It ends up being it's surprisingly strong in a lot of cases. So I'm really high on at least one copy of Thick-Eyed Hunter. I've been having fun with 2, but I could see it being replaced with something else in case I needed a sideboard slot or something, maybe this upcoming weekend, but I don't think I'm ever going to be on 3 of them. Next, we have one of the remnants from my Zen deck, Burdens of the Past. I really liked Burdens of the Past in Zen, and again, I was expecting kind of this slower, fatiguey meta to arise to try and combat Aurora. So I wanted to have a deck that was both good into Aurora and good into the decks that are trying to beat Aurora, right? So Burdens of the Past lets me combat all those decks that want to use Rootbound Carapaces, bunch of Sink Belows, Fate for Scenes, any kind of D-React stopped by Burdens of the Past. It's very rare, and you're not expecting to draw a card off of Burdens of the Past, like the draw a card clause. That's almost irrelevant. It's just, again, if you're trying to rush down a deck that's trying to block you out, Burdens of the Past is very good. And then also, the nice fact is that it is a blue, it blocks 3, and it gets out of your hand on a Blood Rush turn if you need to just throw something out there. If your opponent leaves you with like 2 non-attack blue cards. My second to last tech is Sound the Alarm. Sound the Alarm was a choice that I wanted to add. This was, again, after I watched Calling Kobe. I want to say it was Calling Kobe. It was in the top 8 match. It was Florian versus Zen, and Zen was running Sound the Alarms. And I took some inspiration from that, and I also took some inspiration from Ethan Mansant's Club Levialist, which apparently everyone hated. But functionally, the goal was to roll scabs a lot and then get value out of your club into 1 for 5, functionally. So you'd get 2 card 9. This is not as good as 2 card 9 because we're on claws, but with all of our agility tokens and ways to create agility, there's a lot of times when pitching a blue for a claw and a 5 cost attack is not the worst. Usually you already have to evaluate agilities on a 2-turn basis instead of just the 1 turn, but on a single turn, if you have an agility, an agile windup, a blue, and a Sound the Alarm, you can 3 card 8, which is not impressive, but have an agility for the next turn, right? And then also, Sound the Alarm, the value here is I was finding it really hard to figure out when I was supposed to block on an Aurora's turn. They're unfortunately able to bluff so much with their hero power, with CLV, with any sort of instance that they have, electromagnetic somersaults. So Sound the Alarm is a really good way. It doesn't have to hit, it's just on attack. It's a really good way of showing me what their turn is going to look like, which means I get to automatically defend correctly, no matter what they do. There's like some mystery if they have an arsenal, but otherwise, like especially if they have no arsenal, I just get to understand how their turn is going to work while presenting 5 damage, and that's just very, very strong. Also, while I was testing, you can see my results. I've shown my results at this point, but I played against a lot of Fang on Talishar, and Sound the Alarm is like hilarious into Fang. Not only is it a solid, it's a fine 2-card play. This is taking the spot of, if you remember in Eugene's list, he was running Freewheeling Renegades. I, again, didn't feel like I needed more 2-blocks at this point because I wanted to be able to play a numbers game with Aurora, with Fang, with some of the other faster decks. And this being a 1 for 5 3-block that I could roll scabs for felt like a pretty good option. And again, with Fang, it fills that Freewheeling Renegade's role in that if you have an all-red hand, you can block away with 2 cards and then send the Freewheeling Renegades send the Sound the Alarm with the other red. This was actually a card that I considered being on Tunic for because the concept, again, of blocking away for 9 to 12 points of value, and then firing off a sound the alarm with tuning resource seemed like a really, really efficient value line. But in the end, I decided Savage Sash was too powerful to make that decision, to make that cut. But regardless, I think it was round 1 of my ProQuest. I ended up matching into a Fang, and I was able to use the Sound the Alarm to, when he was at 4, to put a Reckless Swing on the top of my deck, and then it just made it so he was never able to go to 2. And then eventually, I found a second Sound the Alarm, found the other Reckless Swing, and then I double Reckless Swinged him to seal up that game. Yeah, Sound the Alarm, very good card. Last notable tech card is probably Arcane Polarity. This is a card I was testing in like September. I was testing Arcane Polarity a lot during ProQuest London time, and I ended up playing Zen for that season. But against Auroras of that time, I was finding a lot of success into them with 1 copy of Arcane Polarity in the sideboard. Again, I don't want multiples of this card. This is another card that I don't want multiples of, simply because there are turns where Aurora just doesn't throw arcane damage, and there's like this nightmare scenario of what if you draw 2 Arcane Polarities on a turn where she's not doing arcane damage, you die. So I really liked having the 1 copy, and ultimately it was my round 2 opponent. My round 2 opponent was an Aurora, and I ended up being at 2, going to 1, and surprising them with an Arcane Polarity, going back up to 5 and not dying. So it's functionally, it functionally plays the same as a Sigil of Solace, obviously, but that you can only play on at a turn that your opponent has dealt Arcane to you. And also this card, it's a card that's really good at sitting in Arsenal as well. You don't want to let it sit there for too long, because then you're just like not pressuring damage into the Aurora, and your goal is definitely to be pressuring damage into the Aurora. It's a very surprising card that just kind of gets you there. So, especially against a deck that's so above rate as Aurora is. Those are the major, so again, those are the major changes I think we'll discuss a little bit. So the thing is, Rhinar's place in the meta is very interesting right now. He's very good at catching the decks that are good against Aurora. Like if you are, it's not a guaranteed win by any means, but I would say that Rhinar's at least a little favored into the Jarl matchups, into the Verdance matchups, into the Florian matchups, and also like I think he's very reasonable into the Kano matchups. Intimidate is just like very good into Kano in general. And then you also have like the tech of sometimes you get to, and as we mentioned before, like you can really stuff a Ragamuffins with a windup. That being said, obviously not a lot of people had success with Rhinar over the weekend. I expect his numbers to go up as we get further along in this ProQuest season. A bumblebee. Sorry. I expect his numbers to go up as the ProQuest season continues, but for now, Aurora's a really hard matchup. Aurora's really tough. Really, really, really tough. That is actually going to be it for the video. It's a very quick video. Normally I would do some games here, but I don't really have the time for that this week. Lots of cosplay stuff coming. US Nationals is coming, so keep an eye out on that. I don't know if I'm going to have a video out every week until then. I would like to kind of get ahead on my uploads so that I have like a backlog of stuff, so I'm not just making a video every week and not really getting any better at the whole video making process. So keep an eye out for what's coming to the channel, but for now, check out the list, check out the sideboard guide, play some games, see how it feels. I will say my experience testing this list felt very much like, I think Majin Caleb did a deck tech on Verdance where he just felt like he was losing the whole time. And I truly felt when I was testing this list and I just like playing games, jamming games on Talishar, I was playing and I felt like I lost every game. Every single game, the game was over. The game ended. And I was like, oh, sure, I lost. Like, and then I moved on, played another game. Oh, it feels like I lost. Move on, played another game. Oh, feels like I lost, played another game. And then clearly I'm 17, 20, like I've won 18 games out of 25, 17 games out of 25. That's pretty good. That's all. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, go test out the deck. Tell me what you like about it. Tell me what you don't like about it. Whatever. Bye.